Welcome to the 707, a weekly half-hour program produced by KRCB, a service of NorCal Public Media. The 707 features voices and stories from your community, stories about social activism, and stories that show how we are connected to each other. I'm your host, Michelle Marques. A quilt is generally made of scrap pieces of fabric, bits that are not useful on their own, but together create something valuable and beautiful. This idea mirrors that of the power behind protest. One person's voice or actions are easy to overlook, but when a crowd unifies behind a common idea, the impact is hard to ignore.
The We the People Community Quilt Project is a grassroots project that is born and carried out here in Sonoma County, although it is now bleeding over to other counties at this point. But it is a project that is inviting people to express their hopes for our democracy here in the United States and their hopes for what that looks like, what that feels like, and what they're passionate about. And to take a quilt square and express their view or idea on a quilt square, not as a protest against something, but as a hope for what they wish for in the future.
That's Pamela Van Halsema, project lead on the We the People Community Quilt Project. She has been hosting workshops since January to introduce the public to the concept and recruit people to make a quilt panel.
And we've started collecting them already, and together make a type of fabric vision board for the world that we're hoping for, what we are striving for, what we are advocating for in this time in our nation that is fraught with constitutional crisis and worries about rights and problems with the environment and education and media and all, you name it, all sorts of things.
And where did the inspiration come for this project?
It came in a meeting that I had in a subcommittee of the local Sonoma County Indivisible group. There is a gentleman who is in that group named Don who has always thinks big. And he said, I think we need a community quilt. And we need a quilt that'll be so big, it'll be on Ocean Beach in San Francisco, and everybody can see the message. And we all got really excited about the idea of making a quilt and started imagining people sewing and people getting together and being creative together. And actually, he at first was planning to just print big banners, like commercial banners, and link them together as if it was a quilt so that it could be so large. But we really wanted to get people involved in something made with people's hands and expressing many, many people's views. And so inspired by that very spark of an idea, we took it a different direction that was more inspired by the National AIDS Memorial Quilt, actually. In fact, we looked at that example as a way to do this, to get people to express something that they felt very strongly and very passionately about on fabric and bring all those ideas together into one large display.
Van Halsema has experience as a maker educator, and she says the act of creating something with your hands is a powerful experience.
Making is a powerful way to express something that maybe you can't do it with words. And it also is an experience that, at least with this type of making, which is with fabric, which is fiber art, it is actually something that generally you have to do pretty slowly, and you have to focus, and you have to think on both the left and right side of your brain, actually. And I think that is being able to think and slow down and stitch, or if some people are painting, or people are trying to figure out how to take an abstract concept like democracy, and then how would I show that in a different way that's abstract in a symbol or a color. It really makes you think critically. It makes you think with creativity, and it also, just in a very real sense, makes you have to slow down and focus, which in our world of so much distraction, that's not, it almost feels like a luxury, but I think it's a necessity that we slow down and focus and use our creative skills to make something with our hands.
So are you a quilter?
No. I am not a quilter, but I'm definitely a maker. And I'm not an artist with a capital A, but I'm an artist with a small a, which means it's not my full-time job. I don't get paid for my art, but I have always been involved in the arts. I dabble in all kinds of arts, and that's how I got involved with maker education. I mean, ever since I was a kid, I'm always involved in arts. My college degree was in the arts. I even was a chef, and that's what brought me to Sonoma County. And so that's also making stuff. Just get me somewhere where I can make a mess making something. It makes me happy.
Yeah, making stuff is great. So I attended one of your workshops at the Petaluma Library. Tell me about how you're spreading the word and what these workshops are like.
I really had the feeling that we needed to have at least a 1 hour time where we get together with others in the same room and let's talk about what we want this quilt to symbolize. Not just one idea, but all of us have different ideas. And to understand what the purpose of the project is, to be this expression of a people-powered democracy where liberty and justice for all might be real, might be truly real for all people. So what does that mean? What does that look like? And so that workshop is really to get everybody kind of on the same page for the inspiration and understanding of the themes that might work for this. And I do think that some people automatically look at it and think that maybe it's a bunch of protest signs, and it's actually quite different from that. It's actually our hopes and dreams rather than a negative statement, turning it into a positive statement.
Van Halsema showed us the size of the quilt panels at the workshop earlier this month, and you could sense trepidation from quilters in the room at the size of the panel.
And the quilt panels are, I always hold this one up, that is one of mine in progress, are this size. They're big.
What's the size?
29.5 by 29.5 inches. Why? It was going to be 30 inches square, and I bought 60-inch muslin, and it wasn't actually 60-inch muslin when I got it. So, or if you like a nicer, rounder number, it's 75 centimeters square. But guess what? We send you home with this piece of muslin, so you have it already cut. But we want 100 of these. And, when I first talk to quilters, they're like, that's just too big. I'm like, well, I'm sorry, but we have to be loud right now. It's going to be big. I don't care. Stretch yourself and make it simple. You do not have to do 7 million little pieces. You just make it big and bold because we can't afford to be quiet right now. We got to be loud.
Van Halsema explained that part of the inspiration for the We the People Community Quilt Project came from another famous quilting project.
Of course, we were very inspired by the AIDS quilt. Is there anyone in here who actually helped on any of the panels for the AIDS quilt? You did. Can you tell me a little about it?
Well, to be honest, I can't remember what the quilt was that I was working on, but it was the AIDS project was at the time was centered in a small storefront in the Castro on Market Street in San Francisco, and so people just volunteered to show up and sew whatever needed sewing that day. Yeah. And there was loads of fabric and so on and so forth. So it was right from the beginning it was this amazing community community project, and it was really nice to kind of go in and be sewing with lots of gay men and all kinds of people. So.
Oh, that is amazing. Oh, I've had 3 others in these workshops who have also worked on the quilt. Oh,
that was Kathie Andrew, who sewed part of the AIDS quilt in the late 1980s. After sharing more quilting examples, Van Halsema asked people to begin thinking about democracy. I'm at a table with 3 Sonoma County elementary school teachers, Lisl, Christie, Linda Coleman, and Kathie Miller. After we spend time thinking, Lisl starts by sharing her concerns.
Human rights and civil liberties are being crushed. Whether that is, and this includes for people who are, officially citizens and people who are officially non-citizens, and immigrants are being demonized repeatedly. And there's a secrecy to activities of ICE that we don't know what's happening to immigrants that are abducted. No one can go inside those facilities. These are all things that are deeply problematic.
I have a long list, and for me, it always starts with children and young people and what their future is going to be like, and I am currently concerned about the impotency of elements of government and the system to stand up to what's happening at the top. And the lack of control is very frustrating for me.
As she said, children were teachers, and so our goal is to help children become good adults that will contribute to the community, and all kids are really important. I'm concerned about the division that other people are trying to create of an us and them when it's supposed to be all of us together. We're all people. We all need to be drawn together. And I am very concerned, as you said, about the greed. We don't need to be greedy. Most of us have plenty, and it needs to be shared appropriately and help people do well with what they're doing. Be generous.
In the next segment of the 707, we'll hear how these concerns will be transformed into quilt panels that represent a community's hopes for democracy, as well as hear how and where the quilt will be displayed. This is KRCB.
KRCB is Sonoma County's NPR station, featuring the voices, sounds, and culture that make our home unique. From the heartwarming tales of postcards,
our grandmother was the founder of Juneteenth in Sonoma County,
to the Arts Briefs series shining a spotlight on the incredible youth in the arts scene.
You can express everything that you feel.
And farm tales.
We live in this beautiful area that allows all forms of success in agriculture.
Your stories, your station. KRCB 104.9, Sonoma County's NPR station.
Welcome back to the 707 on KRCB. I'm your host, Michelle Marques. I'm at a We the People Community Quilt Project workshop in Petaluma, where groups have been talking about the main things concerning them in our country right now. Pamela Van Halsema then leads the group to think about those challenges and to imagine what we would want to see instead.
What could you state in a different way that's the opposite of the crisis you've identified, but is the way the thing should be in a world that's right, in a world that has justice, that has liberty, that has prosperity, not for now, but for our future generations?
I'm sitting with a group of elementary school teachers who have inspired so many children to be kind, and we talk about the way inspiration can come from students as well.
Well, and that's what we've done as teachers, is try to teach kindness when they're young enough to incorporate it in their way of doing things. I keep hoping it'll make a difference.
I think it does. I think kids learn from their teachers and hopefully from their parents how to be a good human and how to be a human who makes mistakes and keeps showing up the next day to try to do better.
They can learn from the other students, from their peers, once the culture has gotten it that way.
Right.
So I think that's happened at school.
And I know I was talking with a parent about this the other day, that I am so proud of my students when I see them helping each other toward a common goal instead of just working individually and trying to get there fastest. Because, let's face it, that's what we're supposed to be doing here, is helping each other get to where we need to go. Which means some people are going to need more help and some people are going to need less help.
The workshop continued with potential design ideas as well as demonstrations of various methods that could be used on quilt panels. When I spoke with Van Halsema the next week, she said that sewing actually isn't necessary.
You could paint on it. You could make a collage of fabrics cut out using, we've demonstrated methods for, you could sew those pieces of fabric down. You could use a certain kind of what's called fusible web, which basically is an iron-on adhesive product to build that collage. You could literally quilt it in a traditional manner. You could do screen printing. We're open to many different methods. We've got a wonderful selection of donated fabrics that we've received as well. So people make these colorful with patterns and all different kinds of textures. And then our volunteers are actually adding that that batting that you see, that quilted soft stuff in the backing of these squares. Although some of the quilters have already done it themselves, if people haven't added that, we have volunteers who are adding that. And that stitchery that goes along with the batting really adds a whole nother level of interest. So we are very open to any type of mark making, as I like to call it, on fabric that's appropriate for fabric. So that's all accepted. It has to be able to be folded. It has to be able to be moved around. We'd love to have this last for at least 50 years, like the AIDS quilt is. So we want it to be of something of good quality and appropriate to go on that cotton fabric, but we're very open to different options.
That's great.
It's never going to be washed in the washing machine. It's never going to be a functional quilt on somebody's bed. So it can be a little different, but we're very open to using different methods. And that's why people can join if they've never quilted or sewn before, because you have other methods available to you.
She says once assembled, the quilt will be quite large.
Each panel will be 16 of these quilt squares put together, which makes a 10-foot by 10-foot quilt, and we will display them side by side. Now, if I get 100 back, that means we have 6 10-foot by 10-foot quilts. However, if I get 200 of them back, well, I guess that's 12 10-foot by 10-foot quilts. So we'll see how many actually get returned. And the word has gotten out. People have to return those quilt squares to me by May 15th. People are really excited about this quilt. It is exciting to see it come together. And so I think there'll be a second phase of this quilt perhaps growing after July 4, which is when we want to do the big reveal leading up to Election Day. We may need to do a phase 2, but I'm just holding off till we can get this to be successful. I love a good pilot to test if something works.
Yeah. Okay, so July 4th is the big reveal day. Where and how is it going to be revealed?
I'm working with Indivisible Sonoma County, who is planning an event in Courthouse Square on July 4, and the quilt reveal will be there, and we are now masterminding actually the display structure for it. So I don't have that exactly ready to express to you, but we are looking at different ways to hold some of them up. Some of them may be laying on the ground. When the AIDS quilt was displayed, they were all laying on the ground, but the space at Courthouse Square is limited. So we're looking at different ways of displaying it. One thing we love about the individual 10-foot quilt option, however, is these are portable. For after July 4, I'm inviting groups to display them at their own events from July 4 up to Election Day and beyond. And Indivisible Petaluma, Indivisible Healdsburg, Indivisible Napa, Indivisible West Marin, the Center for Peace and Justice have all expressed interest in being part of this whole project, and they will have the option of bringing these to their events as well after July 4.
What about the symbolism of each person doing their just one thing in terms of how it relates to democracy and how it relates to hope for change?
That's a great question, and you know what? A quilt is such an amazing metaphor in so many ways for our nation, because a quilt is where you take, mix and match little pieces of different shapes, colors, textures, and you sew them together to create something, a beautiful fabric. And this is definitely something where each of us brings our own thought, idea, or hope together to create this patchwork of ideas. But in the whole, I feel like it almost makes a graph or a survey. In a way, I think of it as a survey. I do surveys for my job sometimes. Like somebody said to me, oh, well, what if there's several that are about healthcare, or several, is it okay if we repeat the idea? And I say, absolutely. Absolutely, because it shows how many people are passionate about that idea. I do think it's a way of expressing ourselves just through a different medium. And I also, some people noted that, when some quilts are done extremely meticulously, and this is not a quilt like that. we can't be that meticulous when there's so many different people using so many different methods. The consistency is like giving out that consistently sized cotton square to use as your basis. But coming back, they'll be a little bit misshapen, or, who knows if they're going to go together with precision. And I actually embracing that as absolutely another symbol for how diverse our nation is and how wonderfully varied that makes this look. And it's a different kind of symbol for our nation and the different things that need to come together in a democracy. And they can't all match all the time. There are compromises you need to make. We'll need to make compromises as we join these together to make them work as a whole.
Learn more online at wethepeoplequilt.org. I'm your host and producer of this program, Michelle Marques. This show is a service of NorCal Public Media. Our president and CEO is Darren Lisl.